Welcome to Kicks and Minivans, a podcast for dads who love sneakers. I am your host, KG. However you're watching and listening, thank you for tuning in, hanging out with us, being here for a few. And we're going to jump right into it. Usually I record these at night. It is early in the morning right now, and I'm trying to get this in before the kids wake up. You know what I'm saying? So I got my coffee. I got my opinions. We ready to go. Let's jump into this. We're going to talk about, do you trust your spouse? That's what we're talking about today. Ain't that a fun topic? Do you trust your spouse? And my feeling, my gut is you can answer that in 0.2 seconds. You can answer immediately yes or no if you trust your spouse. But here's another question. Does your spouse trust you? I'm going to sip my coffee while you ponder that one. Sorry, I'm feeling a little extra this morning. Maybe it's the fresh coffee in me, but do you trust your spouse, and does your spouse trust you? Because my feeling, my gut reaction is that whether you answered yes or no to the first question, the same answer is true of the second one. It's very unlikely that you trust your spouse when your spouse doesn't trust you, and vice versa. It is a reciprocal thing. It is a give and take thing. Like if one party in a marriage relationship does not trust the other, it is near impossible to have both parties, like the other one, trusting each other. And so how do you go about building that trust, and what breeds that distrust in a marriage, right? And so some of y'all might be frustrated, and maybe the answer to those questions is a yes and no. My gut reaction says that it's going to be the same. Either you both trust each other or you both don't trust each other. That's my gut reaction. But it's possible that you're like, yo, I trust my spouse. My spouse really doesn't trust me though, and I don't know why. You don't know why, but you won't let your spouse have the passcode to your phone. Hello? Does your spouse have access to your phone? You say like, well, I don't understand why my spouse doesn't trust me. Y'all don't share money. Y'all don't talk about money. I've seen stuff where people are like Venmoing their spouses back for Chick-fil-A. Like what? Excuse, like, yo, you ever get on Venmo? This drives me nuts about Venmo. Venmo is a great tool. Like, I use it all the time, but it drives me nuts that you can go in and you can see what other people are doing with their life and their money. Like, I don't need Venmo to be a social media app. I don't need that. But you go in and you're like, yo, Billy has Venmo'd his wife for Chick-fil-A. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you Venmoing your wife back? I don't know a Billy, by the way. I probably do, but that's made up for this. But like, I've seen people in there Venmoing their spouse back for the electric bill for Chick-fil-A. Like, I'm sorry. What happened to what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine? Like, this is, I know not every marriage relationship shares money, right? And I ain't coming at no one in particular. I ain't attacking anyone in particular, but I think if y'all ain't sharing money, you functioning as roommates. You pay this half of the rent, or you pay these bills, or you put that, like, and it's this negotiation thing, and this we're not sharing our money. We're not building wealth together. And it's like, all right, it ain't just about splitting the bills. It's about building wealth. It's about building a legacy. Like, you can't do that if you're not sharing money. And you can't really trust each other if you're not willing to trust each other with your finances. And some of y'all saying, well, I don't know why my spouse doesn't trust me, but your spouse doesn't have access to your phone. You never let your wife scroll through your phone. Like, when's the last time your spouse just had free access to just go through your phone? Some of y'all panic at that idea. Some of y'all, like, my wife has free access to my phone. Like, you can go in there, do whatever she wants. I got nothing to hide. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, yo, I wonder if how many of y'all sitting there, you're like, my spouse don't trust me, but you got a work wife or a work husband. Like, the fact that is even a term, that is even a phrase, a work wife, a work husband, like, the fact that is even a phrase is appalling to me. Like, that you got this, like, extra wife at work that like just gets it. Like, y'all ever watch The Office? Like, hello, Pam left her fiance. Now, granted, that was like an extreme situation. Like, he was not a great fiance, but like Pam left him for her work husband, made him her real husband, had babies together. Like, come on, man. So nah, I'm sorry. Like, I would not be comfortable if my wife had a work husband. I would not be comfortable if she had a work husband and didn't let me go through her phone all the time. Now, granted, I don't ever go through her phone because I don't have a reason to. But I know her password. I have access to all her social media accounts. Like, I could go through all that anytime I want, and vice versa. She could go through she could scroll through all my DMs. She could scroll through my texts. She could scroll through whatever she wants. And our bank accounts are the same because I don't make no money. Right? I make very minimal money doing like several side hustles. Like, I work really hard to make not a lot of money doing stuff. But like, we share money. So like, I had nothing to hide. Like, she has access to the bank accounts. I have access to the bank accounts. Like, we share all that. I got nothing. There is no money that I am spending that you don't know about. And there's no money she's spending that I don't know about. Like, we have this open line of communication between the two of us that we share everything in life. And I'm sorry, maybe that's uncomfortable for you, but as I talked about last week, the two shall become one. It is no longer just me and just her living our own separate lives. Like, we have come together to build a life together. And so part of that is building trust with each other. And part of that is just having an open door. Like, there is nothing about me that my wife does not know. There is nothing about me that she cannot ask about. We talked about mental health, porn addiction. Like, my wife has a green light. She has an open door to always ask me how I am doing in those areas. And granted, she used to ask me a lot when I was really struggling with porn addiction. She would ask me all the time. She's like, hey, how have you been today? Not even like this week, like today. Now it's like she asks me every once in a blue moon, but like, she can ask me whenever she wants how I'm doing, and I will be honest with her. Like, we have an open door of communication. We have access to each other's phones. We have access to each other's the bank accounts. Like, we have an open door between the two of us, and that breeds trust and communication. And so if you are feeling like your spouse does not trust you and you do not trust your spouse, you need to work on opening up part of yourself. And look, there is more types of cheating than just sexual cheating. There's more types of cheating than simply sleeping with someone that's not your spouse, kissing someone that's not your spouse. Like, there is emotional cheating. Like, I'm convinced this happens all the time in marriages. Like, you want to talk about a work husband, work wife, like that is like borderline, depending on the situation, that is emotional cheating. You are emotionally cheating on your spouse because you are giving a part of yourself to that work spouse that only belongs to your real spouse. And I'm sorry, but like, you have a real spouse at home. You don't need another one at work. Some of y'all, man. There is more types of cheating than just sexual cheating, emotional cheating. There's financial fidelity. This is a huge one. If you've ever listened to the Dave Ramsey show, like, there is people that will call in that their spouse was spending like their life savings gambling away at the casino, or spending that money on girls online. Like, I've heard stories, I've seen like, there is financial fidelity. And so what happens when that, let's take just that baseline right there. If that happens, right? Dude goes and spends 100 grand from their retirement savings on gambling at the casino, loses it all, right? What happens in that situation in order to, because the trust has been broken. Like, and that's a part of the cheating thing, the fidelity thing. Like, if you go and you sleep with someone that's not your spouse, there is a broken line of trust between you and your spouse now. When you go, and that's how it is with any of these types of cheating, not just the sexual kind, but the financial kind, the emotional kind, whatever it is. Like, there's a broken line of trust now that happens. There's a broken line of trust now that has occurred that needs to be rebuilt if the marriage is to be saved. Right. And so when there's this financial fidelity thing, what happens? The guilty party loses access. So when there is cheating of any kind, there's a broken line of trust that occurs, right? Obviously, like if you go and you sleep with someone that is not your spouse, there is now a broken line of trust that is clear and obvious. Everyone can see that you've broken a sacred vow, a line of trust in your marriage. But the same can be true in all of these other areas. It just might not be as obvious or as talked about or as taboo. And so when it happens, we might sweep it under the rug or not do the work to repair that, right? But this financial, like, let's look at financial fidelity, right? Like, if a dude goes out, spends 100 grand out of the retirement savings, blows it all at the casino, there is a level of trust that has now been broken between you and your spouse. And so what happens? You have to rebuild that trust up, which means you need to almost like the guilty party almost needs to be treated like a child again, right? Like no access to money. You ain't going out at night. You ain't going to the casino. You're not playing online poker. Like you are losing access to some of these things. Like you're almost being treated as a child because children are treated as children because you can't trust them to handle things like grown-ups can. And if you are a grown-up and you cannot handle things, you need to be treated like a child. Like that's just the way it is. And so if you have been emotionally cheating on your spouse, you might need to lose access to some things. If you are sitting there texting a bunch of females that ain't your wife, I'm sorry, but you might need to start giving phone access to your spouse. You might need to cut off some people, block some numbers, because you probably shouldn't be texting all these girls on the side if you got a spouse, if you got a wife. Like I would not blame her for not trusting you if you texting Ashley and Sarah and all these other chicks. Like, I'm sorry, what? Like, who are they and why do they matter so much that you need to keep on texting them? And look, it's one thing if it's a coworker and you're texting logistics, and if you're running a business and you're trying to set up an appointment, like that kind of stuff is like that happens, right? Like that's straight, that's cool. Talk with your spouse about it still. You know, like if you are working with someone and like you need to have a work lunch with this female, like inform your spouse. Like that's not a bad thing to do. But like that kind of stuff happens, but you can still build barriers and levels of protection. And this was a big thing in full-time ministry where there was always this emphasis. It's a Billy Graham thing, right? Like he had said that he would never go to lunch or have a meeting one-on-one with a woman that wasn't his wife. And so like if he was going to meet with a woman, he took someone else with him, whether that was a wife or a coworker, like a third party, like something else like that. And so a lot of times in churches, like you will see them institute this sort of thing. And so like, hey, when I was in ministry, anytime I met with a female, it was like it was in the lobby of our office building or something along those lines, or there was a third party that came along. My wife would go with me to some of these things. Like there was just, we set up levels of protection so that like it was above this, what is it? The term they use in scripture? Be above reproach, right? Where it's like, you couldn't even look and think that there was like a hint of sexual immorality happening. Right. And so, but if you're sitting there and so I say all that to say like, hey, there are things like when you're working and you're working with someone of the opposite spouse, you're working on a project together, something like that, like you're going to have communication with them, like, right. But limiting it to work stuff or to logistical stuff is one thing. Sitting them, how's your day? Good night, beautiful. Like what? And some of y'all think I'm tripping, and I'm not, because I've seen the receipts. There is married men telling their coworker, good night, beautiful. Bro. And you mad your spouse don't trust you? What? Get a grip, bro. Come on, man. This is, look, how would you feel if your spouse was sitting there texting her work husband, good night, handsome, good night, hunk? Like, man, you'd be tripping. You would lose it. You'd be so furious. Yet you're mad at your spouse for not trusting you. Come on, man. Nah, it don't go like that. Look, if you want your spouse to trust you, you need to be trustworthy. That means give them access to your phone. Let them know who you're talking to. Let them know who you're spending time with. Like it ain't all that hard. Like, look, when me and my wife, when we go and do something, like we will go and we will ask each other for, if she wants to go have a girls' night with her girls, right? She will come and she will say like, "Hey, can I go hang with Ella or hang with Kat or whatever it might be?" She is not asking me for permission. She's asking for availability and to keep me informed as to what's going on. Like if she's just going to get the kids to bed and then leave the house, I might start asking questions, right? Like if she's just going to bounce after the kids go to bed, like good night, see you tomorrow. Like I might be like, "Excuse, like where you going?" Right? And not because I don't trust her, but just because that's kind of shady, right? But like she'll put it on the family calendar. She'll ask me. She'll be like, "Hey, me and Ella gonna have a girls' night tomorrow after the kids go to bed. Is that cool with you?" And she's not asking for permission. She's asking for availability, checking to see like, "Hey, do I have anything going on where I need to leave the house? Is it cool? Like, am I cool to be home with the kid?" Like, it's this respect thing that we're just showing each other. If I want to go to B-Dubs and watch a game with the guys, like I'm asking her if that's cool. And it's number one, letting her know where I'm going, what I'm doing, who I'm gonna be with. And number two, it's checking that availability. It's like I don't need permission from my wife to go to B-Dubs and watch a game with the guys. But I do need to make sure like that she's cool here with the kids, handling bedtime, all that stuff. And cool with, being alone for a few hours while I go out and hang with the dudes. And all these things are cool, but it's just a mutual, it's such a small thing. But not everyone does it. And it kind of blows my mind because it's almost like you resent your spouse too much to just give them a base level of communication. It's like you got so much pent up about your spouse that you're like, nah, I ain't got to tell them like what they need to know my business for. Like, because they're your spouse, it's your wife, that's your husband. Like, why would you not let them know your business? If there's anyone in the world that should know your business, it's them. But some of y'all want to, I don't know what it is. I don't know exactly what it is, but there is a level of trust that is essential for a healthy marriage. Like, and I would almost argue that like full out trust is essential for a healthy, happy marriage. And so even the smallest hint of distrust can breed and grow and expand. And so any of these things that I've been talking about, like if you are guilty of that or your spouse is guilty of that, there's a change that needs to occur. There is something that needs to happen in order for you guys to get back on the same page. And my fear is that some people listening, y'all might be in so deep, or you might be so fed up, or you might be so upset with your spouse that you are not willing to take the step necessary, take the small step and say like, "Hey, my passcode is 1234 or whatever it is." Like of giving them your password to your phone. Some of y'all are so resentful of your wife that you think that she ain't worth having access to your bank account. Some of y'all are so resentful to your wife that you think she ain't allowed to read through my text messages. Like, why would I give her that? Why would I give her that availability? And if that's you, your marriage is heading to a very rocky place. It's probably in a rocky place. And it's just going to go further and further down into the depths until there's no coming back from it. And so if you care about your marriage, if you want to save your marriage, you need to open up. You need to stop hiding things. And what's crazy too is some of y'all might not even have anything to hide. Y'all are just so bitter and resentful that you're just not willing to give them access. You're not willing to give them access to your life straight up out of bitterness and resentment. You might not even be texting someone. You might not even be talking to nobody. You might not even be spending money stupidly like that. Like You might be doing nothing wrong except not allowing access to your spouse. But there's a reason why not allowing access breeds distrust, because it looks like you have something to hide, even though you might not. And so that really makes no sense to me. That some of y'all really might not have anything to hide, but you still are acting like you do and wondering why your spouse don't trust you. Come on, man. And so, look, that's all I got for this week. I'm just ranting at this point. But look, I care about you. I care about your marriage. That's the whole reason I have this podcast, is I want to see people win in marriage and parenting. And it is not possible to win in marriage if you don't trust each other. Just straight up. It's not possible to win in marriage if you don't trust each other. And in order to trust each other, there needs to be access to each other. Saying, hey, I'm an open book. We are one. We are united. The two have become one. We are the same. We are a team here. Team G, that's us. Team whatever you are, right? We are a team. You need to allow access. You need to open up, have open lines of communication. Say, hey, what I have is yours and what you have is mine. And that includes my text messages. That includes my bank accounts. That includes my DMs. That includes my calendar. Like, that includes all of that. Like, I am giving you access so you can see all these things. You can see who I'm texting. You can see who I'm spending time with. You can see how I'm spending my money, whatever it might be. I have nothing to hide from you. And I would ask that you have nothing to hide from me. And look, if you and your spouse are at a point where we ain't sharing nothing, like what I just described does not describe us. Like we don't have access to each other's anything. Someone needs to go first in your marriage. Someone needs to step up. Someone needs to take the lead. If you want to save your marriage, like honestly, it's at that point where, like, if you want to save your marriage, because if the stuff I'm talking about is true of your marriage ain't gonna last long, bro. Like, it's not. And so if you care about your marriage, if you love your spouse, you need to start breeding trust in your spouse. And that starts by opening up. That starts by allowing access. That starts by communication. And it's not just sitting there talking, how was your day each night? Like, it is allowing full access to say, like, hey, you know who I'm talking to. You know how I'm spending my time. You know how I'm spending my money. Like, those are three huge areas where distrust starts, but trust can take over. And if you want to build trust, it takes time. It doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen in an instant. But a huge step forward of that is allowing access to you, to what's going on with you, to who you're talking to, how you're spending your time, and how you're spending your money. And so if you want to start growing the trust between you and your spouse, that's a great place to start, is those three things: who you're talking to, how you're spending your time, and how you're spending your money. Start opening up about those things with your spouse. You open up with her, she opens up with you. You have an open line of communication about all of that between each other. Trust will start to grow. It takes time, but it is possible, and your marriage can benefit from it. And the reason we are talking about this is because I want you to win in your marriage, in your parenting, and the best way you can do that is by growing your trust with each other. I love y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with us. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. This is Kicks and Minivans.